Today was going pretty well if you asked 8 years old, Izuku Midoriya. He and his best friend, 7-year-old Kota Izumi, had actually gotten to eat breakfast, which was a rare pleasure they only got to enjoy when they had enough food left over from dinner. A woman had pitted him enough to give him 1,000 yen. That's roughly equivalent to $10, and that meant they could actually buy lunch from a nearby convenience store. After picking out some onigiri and paying for it, he and Kota walked out of the store and started making their way back to their hideout. Things were going good, until Izuku took a closer look at Kota as they walked through an alleyway and noticed he was holding something under his shirt. "Kota," Izuku said sternly, softly glaring at his friend. "What are you hiding in your shirt?" "TCH." Kota looked away, his expression unchanging. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do, you just chid me," Izuku pointed out. "You only ever do that when I catch you stealing. Now what did you take?" "Be quiet. Do you want the police coming after us?" Kota turned to his best friend. "Ugh, fine. Look." Kota from under his shirt took out 2 bento sets. "I got dinner." "Kota, you can't just steal things. It's wrong." Izuku objected. The two stopped in the alleyway as the typical argument started over again. "We need it more than he needs a couple yen," Kota argued. "That's not the point, it's a crime," Izuku shouted. "Is it a crime to not starve to death?" Kota retorted. "Ayahup." Suddenly something hit Izuku, knocking him over. "Izuku," Kota shouted in concern. "Ow wow," Izuku groaned. The green-haired boy's vision started to refocus, and he saw a white-haired girl, with red eyes and a horn, laying on top of him. She seemed pretty out of it. Clearly, she hadn't been looking where she was going and wasn't expecting to bump into Izuku. "Uh-huh." Izuku started blushing from having a girl right on top of him and looked away. "Hey, watch where you're going," Kota scolded her. "Wait, oh no?" The girl finally realized she'd bumped into someone and had stopped running. She got up, Izuku followed suit, and was about to start running. "Eri," said a menacing voice coming from the allies' exit. The girl froze, and all 3 of them looked towards the end of the alley. Standing there was a man in a large coat with black hair, wearing some kind of plague doctor mask. He had 2, while they could only really be described as goons beside him. The 3 men walked up to the trio, stopping right in front of the trio of children. Eri hid behind Izuku, trembling in fear of the man and instantly telling them that whoever this was bad news. "Thank you for stopping my daughter," the man lied. "She can get rather easily frightened, so if you could just give her back to me and run along, that would be appreciated." Izuku was about to say something, but Kota put out his hand in front of him, gaining his attention so Izuku could see the black-haired boy shake his head. "Sorry about the trouble, sir." Kota walked forward. "But she has something very important to us." The man raised an eyebrow. "And that is?" Kota looked both ways and motioned for the man to come closer. The man gave him a disgusted look, but did so anyway, moving forward and leaning down to Kota's level. And so Kota got close and punched him in the balls. Ugh! The masked man was completely unprepared for that and fell over from the sheer shock and pain. "Boss, your balls," one of the goons cried. "He just hit the boss in the junk," the other one said. "Run." Kota ran away from them as fast as he could. Izuku grabbed Eri and did the same. "Ah, go after them, you idiots," the man ordered the 2 goons, who had been so stunned by the sheer audacity of Kota. "If they get away, it's your heads." With the threat to their lives clear, the goons started running as fast as they could to catch up to the children, who already had a good head start. The 3 kids kept on running, already starting to feel tired as their tiny bodies didn't have much stamina, and they could see the men starting to gain on them. "They're catching up," Kota pointed out. "Kota, let's go to the trains," Izuku suggested. "I have an idea. Eri, I need you to say something when we get there." A few minutes later, at the train station, adults were going by their normal business until they suddenly heard a cry. "Help!" Izuku, Kota, and Eri ran in, stopping for a moment to catch their breath. Eri had tears on her face that were actually just water from Kota's quirk, but to the adults combined with her red eyes, made it seem like she was sobbing. "Bad men. They touched me in my no-no places. And now I can't be a bride anymore." Eri cried out the line Izuku told her to say. Many gasps and looks of horror rang among the crowd before many of them moved to act. "Get them on the train," one woman said. "Someone call the police," cried a man. "Get the heroes," another shouted. Meanwhile, a group of people ushered the kids onto the train. As the train doors closed, the three could see the two men coming in and getting called quite colorful names by the people. "Are you okay, kids?" a woman asked them. "Yais," Eri sniffed. Keeping up the act Izuku told her to put on as best she could, although, given the state of fear and shock she was in, that wasn't too hard. Koda leaned over to Izuku and whispered, "Hey, what did she mean by she can't be a bride anymore?" "I don't know, but I heard it somewhere and I know it's a bad thing," Izuku answered. Just as things were settling down and the adrenaline was wearing off, suddenly, there was a huge flash of light that blinded the three kids. "Ah!" Izuku cried out, rubbing his eyes. "What's going on?" Koda asked, doing the same. When the light died down, the children rubbed their eyes and looked around, only to find that everyone was gone, and they were now alone in an empty train. "Huh!" Koda cried out in shock. "What happened to all the people?" Izuku asked. While the two of them were freaking out, Eri looked up at one of the windows and saw rocks. Then, the train seemed to go faster, so fast that they all had to hold on to one of the poles so they didn't fall down. The windows started freezing over, and they could see strange lights coming in from the outside. This went on for several moments until suddenly, the train started to slow down and eventually come to a stop. The doors opened, but instead of another train station, they were met with the sight of some sort of cave. Out of confusion and wonderment, the three children with their eyes wide and their mouths hanging open walked out of the train and into the cave. "Whoa," Izuku said as the three of them admired the cave. It looked like someone had carved the room out of a cave. There were no lights, yet somehow the room remained lit, if dimly so. The things that drew the most attention were first, the demon-like statues that stood to the side of the main walkway, and secondly, the 6 thrones at the end of the walkway. And then they noticed him. Sitting in the center throne was an old man. He was very skinny and had very long white hair with a long white beard. There was so much of it that they could barely see his face. He was wearing a long robe and some slippers and was holding a long staff with some blue glowy thing at the end. "Welcome, children," he said, his voice hoarse but still loud enough that they could hear it. He got up from his throne and started walking towards them. "My name is Shazam." Koda gave him a funny look. "Shazam? Really?" "Yes, I am the last of the Wizard Council," he explained. "And this is—" "Okay, stop." Koda stopped him, giving him an irritated look. "Wizards? Wizards aren't real. Who are you? Where did you take us? And what do you want?" "Koda," Izuku scolded him, while Eri still hid behind him, giving the wizard a cautious gaze. He was going to explain. Let the wizard talk. Koda grunted and crossed his arms. "Fine." "As I was saying," Shazam continued, "this is the Rock of Eternity, where the wizards once resided. As for why I have brought you here, for that I must tell you a story. There were once 6 great wizards that made up the Wizard Council. However, despite our great power, we could not stop the hands of time from claiming their lives as we grew older, and as such, we decided to give our power to special champions that would protect the world from evil. However, the first to give his power chose poorly, and his champion became corrupt and had to be sealed away by us. The next 2 wizards did not want to give such great power to anyone else, so over the years, they distributed fragments of their power to newly born children. This is how the power now known as quirks came to be." Wait. Koda stopped him again. "Are you saying quirks are magic?" "Shoo." Izuku quieted his friend, before looking to the wizard to continue. The next 2 wizards did not wish to be stuck with the burden of choice after the first champion fell. The wizard continued. "And so they gave their powers to me, before passing away, allowing me to live hundreds of years longer, and choose 3 champions. And now, I choose you 3. You shall inherit my power." "Really?" Izuku had stars in his eyes, and a grin so big it hurt. After years of being quirkless Izuku, a powerless Deku, could it be that now he was going to get powers of his own? Eri was also thoroughly shocked. Someone thought she was worthy of something. "Really?" Koda looked at Izuku like he was crazy. "You actually believe this?" He's obviously lying. Should you accept? Shazam ignored Koda. Put your hands on this staff and say my name. Izuku immediately put his hand on the staff and looked at the other two to do the same. Come on guys, do it. 2. Eri looked away in shame. I don't think I'm worthy. I'm just a curse. Come on Izuku, this is obviously a load of bullshit. Koda cursed. Language. Izuku scolded. But it's true, Koda said. And even if it was true, why us? We're not heroes or champions or whatever. Why not give to a hero? Or I don't know, an adult? I have yet to find any adult man or woman who both had a pure enough soul, except for one man, who already had so much power. The wizard explained. As for why I choose you 3. He looked at Izuku. You have had a heroic spirit since the beginning. And despite your struggles and your setbacks, and even facing all the horrors the world has thrown at you, you have remained pure, unbroken. You refuse to steal even if you must starve. You refuse to hurt others even if they hurt you, and put people first even if you must put yourself at risk. Izuku was now crying tears of joy. No one had ever praised him like that before. Not since his mom, not since she died. He turned to Eri. You have been through horrors that would break the minds of most men, and yet you, a child, remained strong. You did not run from those men because of what they would do to you, but because of what they would do to others, using you. You have no reason to want to help anyone, and yet you do, because you are pure. Eri flinched and became flustered. She had never been praised like that. Ever. And then he turned to Koda. And you, despite your pain, despite your words, and despite even your thoughts, when the time came you acted immediately to save another person, a stranger to you, and put yourself at risk to do so. Koda turned away. TCH, not like I wanted to save her, or anything. That guy was just a creep who needed to get punched. You 3 are worthy. Now place your hands on the staff and say my name, Shazam repeated. Izuku was obviously all in, but the other 2 remained hesitant. Come on guys, Izuku pleaded. If we do this, then Eri won't need to worry about those people that were chasing her. Eri's eyes widened. She had never even considered it, fighting Overhaul. It just seemed to be an insane idea, but if she took this power, then maybe, just maybe she could defend herself from him. And she'd never have to go back to that room again. Slowly, Eri made her way over to Shazam and grabbed his staff. Koda, Koda, Koda please. Izuku begged his best friend. Ugh, Koda groaned, marching over and grabbing the staff. Nothing is going to happen anyway, so why not? Now, say my name, and you will be imbued with a fraction of the wisdom of Solomon, the strength of Hercules, the stamina of Atlas, the power of Zeus, the fortitude of Achilles, and the speed of Mercury, the wizard said. And who are those? Koda asked. Just say the name already, Shazam said, getting more and more irritated by Koda. 3 looked at each other before looking back at the wizard and saying, Shazam. Crack 'em. Suddenly 3 bolts of lightning stuck down where each of the children stood and engulfed them in a flash of light. Enough with the lights, Koda complained. And then he realized that his voice was no longer his voice. It was now much different. I feel weird, Eri said, her voice also surprising her, with how mature it suddenly became. What happened? Izuku asked as they all opened their eyes. And then the changes became much more evident. Where the children once stood were now fully grown adults, looking to be in about their mid to early 20s, all wearing strange hero-like costumes. Izuku was now a large, muscular man standing at almost 7 feet tall, with a wide chest and large beefy arms and legs. It appears that puberty had big plans for the boy. His hair remained basically the same, however his face lost all trace of cuteness in exchange for a more defined handsome face, while still keeping the freckles. His costume was mostly emerald green, except his white cape and hood, his black belt and boots, and the white lightning bolt on his chest. Koda, in comparison to Izuku, was lean with a thinner but still muscular body, and at a far more average height. His hair had also gone mostly unchanged, but his face did become more mature, looking very much like his father. His costume was mostly blue, except white boots, a belt, a cape, and a hood, as well as the white lightning bolt on his chest. Eri was the shortest of the group before, and she still was, being about half a head shorter than Koda and quite a bit shorter than Izuku. Out of them all, she seemed the most petite, but if you looked closer you could see that she still had a lot of muscle. Like the others, her hair was unchanged, but her face did mature, although she did still maintain most if not all of her cute factor. Her costume was mostly red except for some gold trimming that lined parts of her costume and her golden boots. Unlike the boys, instead of pants, she was wearing a skirt. The three of them looked at their newly changed bodies in shock and awe, all of them at loss for words. The first one to snap out of it was Izuku, who got a huge grin on his face, as he could feel the new power in his body. It worked. It worked. Suddenly, Izuku sprinted towards the wizard, moving so fast he became a green blur. Thank you so much for wait a minute, do I have super speed? Izuku started running around the cave at amazing speeds, putting most top heroes to shame. I have a quirk. Eri, meanwhile, still wasn't used to the tingly feeling in her bodies, particularly in her hands. She raised them up, only for lightning to suddenly burst out of her palms and hit the roof of the cave. EAP. Eri jumped back, freaked out by her own power. Okay, magic. Maybe he wasn't lying, Koda admitted, only for Izuku to suddenly appear in front of him. Of course he wasn't lying. Look at us. This is so cool. I feel like I could fly. Izuku gushed. However, he suddenly stopped as he realized he had started to float. Oh my god, I can fly. Izuku took off and started flying really fast in a circle above everyone. Oh, suddenly everyone stopped and looked back at the wizard, who had fallen face first on the ground. Izuku gasped and zipped over to him. Mr. Shazam. Crockham. Suddenly Izuku was hit by another lightning bolt and was returned to his true form. Huh, where did the magic go? Oh, Shazam groaned as he rolled over. Your power is not permanent. Anytime you say my name, you transform either into your champion form or your original body. Oh, Shazam. Izuku shouted. Crockham. The lightning hit Izuku again, and he turned back into his more powerful adult state. The boy sighed with relief that his newfound power had not been taken so quickly. Shazam coughed. Come here, children, quickly. Koda and Eri followed his instructions and walked over to the fallen old man. Izuku was about to help him back up, but the wizard stopped him. Do not bother, children. My time has come. What does that mean? Izuku asked him, his voice laced with concern. It means I am about to die, Shazam explained. Koda and Eri frowned, feeling horrible about watching a man die right in front of them. Is there anything we can do? Izuku asked, tears spilling from his eyes. No, it is simply an aging child. Nothing can be done about it. Well, the wizard looked at Eri. Not nothing per se, but I do wish to be saved regardless. It is my time. Now hear me. I have much to tell you. All three of them stood silent, ready to hear whatever he had to say. Firstly, none of you are at full power yet. The wizard said, your bodies will take time to adapt, and you can only use your powers so much until your bodies completely adapt. Your powers will grow as you do. Learn them well. We will, sir. Izuku sniffed, still upset about someone dying right in front of him. And secondly, with my death, the seals me and the others had placed upon the many great evils in the world will be undone, the wizard explained. Slowly, but surely they will break free, and you will need to stop them. Wait, what great evils? Koda asked. What are they? Where are they? How? It is time, the wizard said faintly. Goodbye, children. Learn how to use your powers and become great heroes. And with those last words, the wizard closed his eyes, and his breathing stopped. The three of them stood there in silence for several minutes. Eventually, Koda spoke up with the important question of, so, how are we going to get out of here? Karkum. All three of them were hit with lightning, and then suddenly they were no longer in the cave. They were back in the train with all the people back in it. Everyone gasped at the sudden appearance of the three, with many of them asking lots of questions. The trio was too confused to answer any of them, as they didn't know what just happened either. Then the doors opened and people filed out of the train and into the station, and Izuku, Koda, and Eri dazedly followed, still not sure what just happened or what to do next. and then they heard a familiar voice. Eri, where are you? All their heads turned towards the voice and saw that the masked man and his goons were here, looking for her. The masked man looked up and spotted her and was shocked to see the now older-looking Eri. Eri, the man said, still in shock. At that moment, she panicked. Go away, Eri shouted, bringing her arms up. She shot out a bolt of lightning at the man. The bolt hit and he was sent flying backward, hitting the ground unconscious as his chest emitted smoke. Ah! All the civilians panicked and started running away at the sight of a quirk being used in a villainous way. Eri looked down at her hands in shock, and then back at the masked man. I did that. They hit the boss. Kill him, one of the goons shouted. They both took out pistols, causing Kota and Eri to freeze up in terror, but Izuku's protective instinct activated and he stood in front of the both of them. Bang, bang, bang. The pistols fired, and the bullets hit Izuku, only to bounce off, doing no harm to him. Izuku blinked. He was frozen in shock for a moment, before his big smile returned. I'm bulletproof. The goons kept firing at Izuku, but the bullets did nothing to him. Not knowing he had nothing to fear from the bullets, Kota, moving faster than the blink of an eye, and the bullets, funnily enough, grabbed both guns and crushed them with his bare hands. Looks like we have super strength too, Kota assessed, with a devilish grin on his face. He then proceeded to flick both goons in the chest, sending them flying into a wall. Haha, take that, assholes. Kota laughed mockingly. Language, Izuku scolded. Oh, come on, I'm an adult, I can swear, Kota argued. Bad words make for bad feelings, Izuku told him. Before the argument could progress any further, someone called out to them. What's going on here? All three of them turned their attention to the speaker, the pro hero, Death Arms. Oh my god, it's Death Arms, Izuku squealed, which sounded super weird with his much deeper voice. Hey hero, you're late, Kota mocked. We already took care of the bad guys. Death Arms looked at the unconscious villains. Okay, let me see your hero licenses. We kinda don't have any, Izuku nervously admitted. He had a bad feeling he knew where this was going. Well, then I'm gonna have to take you in, Death Arms said, moving towards them. Kota smirked and started walking towards the hero. I'd like to see you try, hero. Resisting arrest, huh? Well, buddy, you asked for it. Death Arms cocked his fist back and brought it forward, intending to punch Kota in the face with his enhanced strength. Seeing the bullets on the floor told him they had some form of enhanced durability, so he didn't need to hold back much. However, much to the shock of almost everyone, Kota brought his hand forward and stopped the attack, catching the hero's fist. Whoosh! A slight wind blew in Kota's face due to the force from Death Arms' punch, but this did nothing but make his cape flow. Death Arms was shocked. He had not expected someone to just outright block one of his punches. Kota smirked confidently. If magic was apparently real and he'd gotten his powers from a wizard, then he was pretty sure he was stronger than Death Arms. A hypothesis that had been proven right. My turn, Kota said, his devilish grin growing wider. Watt speeds, not even a pro hero could react to. Kota uppercut Death Arms' jaw. Floom. Death Arms were sent flying through the roof and high into the sky. The room filled with wind as the punch was so great that it stirred up the air around him. Izuku gasped. Death Arms. The green boy, man flew up through the roof to chase the hero. After a few seconds, Izuku caught up to the hero and caught him before he could start falling. Oh my god, Death Arms, I'm so sorry, he didn't mean to do that. He's a nice guy, but he's kinda a jerk sometimes, Ando, you're asleep. Izuku realized that the hero had actually been knocked out by the punch, and not only that, but his jaw was broken. Wow, Kota said as he and Eri flew up to Izuku. I didn't even hit him as hard I could. Kota, you KO'd Death Arms, Izuku shouted. I know, right? Kota cheered, either not getting or ignoring the panic in Izuku's voice. If we beat up a hero, does that mean we're villains? Eri asked fearfully. Kota's smile dropped, as the realization of what he'd just done. Let's just get him to a hospital and we'll figure out everything at home, Izuku suggested. Do you know where to find a hospital? Kota asked. No, Izuku said dejectedly. However, His mood brightened when he noticed police cars and a few ambulances showing up below them at the station. But they do. Izuku flew down towards the ambulance, with the other two following him. Hi. Hey. Izuku says, gaining the attention of all the police and paramedics. We accidentally knocked out Death Arms, sorry about that. His jaw is broken, so I'm just gonna leave him right here. Izuku placed Death Arms next to a stunned paramedic. So, bye? Izuku flew off at top speed, with Koda and Eri following him. Later, elsewhere. We're finally here, Izuku said. The three of them had flown over to an abandoned, mostly destroyed mansion located at the forest at the edge of the city. Where are we? Eri asked. Home, Koda answered simply, as they flew down towards the building. It used to belong to some rich villains, but the heroes attacked them and took them all to jail, Izuku explained. The mansion was abandoned. Me and Koda heard about it and decided to stay here. As they landed, Eri could see more signs of the battle that had taken place. There were holes and cracks everywhere. Some rooms were mostly destroyed, while others stayed somewhat intact. There were burns in seemingly random places as well as some other signs of fighting. When they reached the door, Izuku had an idea. Let's turn back to normal for now, Izuku suggested. The wizard says our powers are limited, so we shouldn't use these forms unless we need them. Koda and Eri thought about it for a moment, before nodding their heads in agreement. Shazam! 3 bolts of lightning came down, turning them all back into children. They walked in, and after a bit of trekking, they reached Izuku and Koda's room, which was like all the other rooms, but it had 2 mattresses in it. Phew! Izuku and Koda finally let themselves breathe, and seeing the 2 boys she now trusted start to relax, Eri lowered her guard a bit as well and released the tension she was holding on to. They were finally home, finally safe. Now, what were they going to do? The 3 children sat cross-legged on one of the mattresses, trying to figure out what to do next. So, let's start with what we should do about the bad guys first. Then we can talk about the magic powers, Izuku suggested. Both Koda and Izuku looked at Eri. Yeah, now that all that's over, explain yourself. Koda damned, making Eri flinch. Who are you? Who were those guys? And why were they after you? Koda, you're scaring her. Izuku scolded the younger boy. It's okay. You helped me a lot, so. I should tell you, Eri said. My name is Eri. I don't know my last name. That man in the mask is Overhaul. He wants to take my blood to make bullets. What? Koda asked. That doesn't make any sense. Why would he use blood to make bullets? It's my quirk. Eri looked down in shame at the mention of her quirk. My quirk? It reverts people back to a previous state. It does a lot of things. But if he puts my blood in some special bullets and shoots them at people, he said it can take people's quirks away. What? Izuku and Koda shouted simultaneously. That's insane, Koda shouted. Quirk erasing bullets, Izuku repeated, his eyes wide as saucers. With those, Hikuda could take down pro heroes in the top 10. He'd hurt a lot of people. Eri cried. Like he hurt me. 2 couldn't let him. I can't let my power hurt any more people. Koda raised an eyebrow. Any more people? Eri froze and then looked away, debating internally on if she should really tell them. In the end, it was a matter of guilt versus fear. The fear that if she told them, they would hate her, thinking she was a curse. But the guilt that came from not telling them was just as immense. She helped her escape Overhaul, and for that, she owed them everything, including the truth. A long time ago, when my quirk activated it, it killed my daddy, Eri explained sadly, causing looks of shock to return on both Izuku and Koda's faces. 2 didn't mean to, and 2 can't remember a lot, but Mommy said I was cursing. And Overhaul said it too. But even if that's true, I won't let my curse hurt anyone else. So please, let me hide here, so Overhaul can't find me. There was a short pause of stunned silence, before Koda eventually shook his head and rolled his eyes. Ugh, that's so dumb. Huh. Eri leaned back fearfully. Had she said too much? Did they hate her now because of her quirk? Koda. Izuku scolded again. What, she's being dumb? Koda pouted. There's no such thing as a curse. She just got unlucky and her quirk came at a bad time. What? Eri didn't understand what she was hearing. Were they saying that she wasn't cursed? Koda gave her a stern look. Listen, on the same day we met you, we got magic powers. That's not cursed. It's like the opposite of cursed. It's like you're blessed or something like that, I don't know. Blessed? Eri was completely taken aback. Koda's right. Izuku gave her the kindest smile she'd ever seen. You're not caused, Eri, and anyone who says you are is a liar and a meanie. I'm sure your quirk could do a lot of good things. 3. Eri felt tears slowly start to emerge. Don't cry. Izuku moved forward and wrapped his arms around the smaller girl, bringing her into a reassuring embrace. It's okay, it's okay. Izuku's touch. No one had ever really given her this feeling before. When the Yakuza goons or the 8 precepts touched her, all she felt was fear. And when Overhaul touched her, all she felt was pain. But Izuku's touch, it made her feel safe, warm, comforted. She couldn't help but sink into it and cry even more. Koda, come here and join the hug, Izuku told his friend. Why? Koda complained. Just do it, Izuku insisted. You don't have to, Eri said between sobs. Koda looked at the sobbing girl that was crying her eyes out into Izuku's chest and tried really, really hard to fight off the urge to help comfort her and the guilt of just standing there doing nothing. Kutateoea, Izuku whined, motioning for him to join. Ugh, fine. Koda relented. Koda's hug was awkward and distant, to the point where it was hard to figure out if he was trying to hug her or push her away, but Eri appreciated the thought anyway. Thank you, Eri cried. I'm not doing this for you. I just got cold, Koda denied, looking away from her to hide his embarrassment blush. They stayed like this for a few minutes until Eri started to calm down. All right, enough with the sappy stuff. Koda pulled away the minute he thought Eri felt better. We have to figure out what to do about Overjerk. Do you think he got arrested back there by the police? Izuku frowned and shook his head. The police and the heroes need evidence to arrest someone. Without any evidence, they have to just let him go. Koda scowled. Then I say we use our new powers and go beat the tar out of him. I'm sure there's something in his base we can use as evidence. You can't, Eri protested almost immediately. He's too strong. Too strong? Did you see me back there? I took out a pro hero, Koda boasted. Izuku sighed at the fact his friend was boasting about turning them into criminals. What's his quirk? It's called Overhaul, Eri said. When he touches something, he can take it apart and put it back together however he wants. Or he can not put it back together at all. Oh, that's so cool. Darn it. Why do so many villains have cool quirks? Izuku lamented. Such a waste. Still don't think he could beat us. Koda crossed his arm defiantly. I thought you said you didn't want to be a hero? Izuku asked the boy, remembering a conversation they had had some time ago. I don't, but that guy needs to get decked. Koda punched his plan to demonstrate. But if we did that, we'd be vigilantes, Izuku pointed out. We're already criminals, so who cares? Koda countered. But if we just say sorry and explain ourselves, then maybe we can not be criminals, Izuku suggested. Well, do you have a better idea? Koda asked him. Yup. A few hours later. And so that's your whole story? The policeman asked the 3 of them. Izuku had decided that the logical thing to do rather than getting involved and becoming vigilantes was to go to the police. The 3 of them were now sitting in a police interrogation room. They had even been offered some food, which they gladly accepted. Yes, sir, Izuku said with his mouth still full. Hey, he was a homeless kid. Who could blame him for trying to stuff as much food into his mouth as possible? This food tastes weird, Koda thought, before shrugging his shoulders and going back to eating. I see. The policeman smiled and looked back at his partner. Well, it's a good thing you came to us first. Yeah, Izuku swallowed his food. Overhaul gonna pay us a pretty penny to get his hands on you. The man smirked sinisterly. What then? Suddenly, they all felt it. The kids started to feel woozy, their bodies rapidly weakening until they slumped over in their seats, and their eyes started to droop. Shashisoya. Koda tried to call down the lightning, but he couldn't even utter a word at this point. No, Eri groaned, her body not even having the power to cry. Was the food worth it, kids? The man laughed. Hope so, nighty-night. Oh, Izuku groaned as he and the others fell asleep. A few hours later. Wake up. Izuku groaned as he started to regain consciousness. He could feel a cold metal floor below him, and his body was being constricted, and he couldn't move his arms or legs. At first, he was confused. However, as his brain started to wake up, he remembered what happened, and that confusion was replaced with panic and fear. His eyes darted open as he took in his surroundings. And much to his horror, only a few feet away from him was Overhaul. Next to the masked villain were three other villains: Mimic, Chronostasis, and Shin Nemoto. They were in a room with no windows, the only light coming from the lights above. Next to him was Koda and Eri, also tied up with rope and also waking up. MMM. Izuku tried to shout, but he found his mouth was covered by tape. Ma'am. Izuku tried to shout Shazam, but with his mouth covered, he couldn't get the words out, and thus no lightning came. Mham. The other two, now fully awake, tried the same thing, but to no avail. Finally awake, Eri, Overhaul asked the small girl, a bit too calmly. You've caused a lot of trouble. Overhaul walked towards Eri and then crouched down to meet her tear-filled, terrified eyes. You ran away, causing me to worry. I even got hurt while I was looking for you. Overhaul glared at her as his clam facade started to drop and venom could be heard lacing every word he spoke. And you ripped in these two poor, innocent young boys. You know what's going to happen to them, right? The price for disobeying me? Eri desperately cried out for him to stop, tear-filled sobs that went unheard due to the tape. That's right, I'm going to kill them, Overhaul said. You've gotten two nice young boys killed. How many people do you have to hurt before you're satisfied, you monster? Izuku tried to shout at Overhaul not to call her that, but that stupid tape was stopping him. Then, Overhaul reached out and ripped the tape off Eri's mouth. Do you have anything to say for yourself, Eri? Overhaul asked her. Want to apologize for killing these two boys? Fear filled Eri's mind, clouding it and making her thoughts fly out of control. There were so many things she wanted to say. She wanted to beg for Overhaul not to hurt them. She wanted to apologize for getting Koda and Izuku involved. She wanted to just cry because after thinking she finally escaped, she was brought back not even a day later. But in a moment of clarity, she figured out exactly what to say. Shazam. Kakum. Lightning burst down from the sky, mysteriously going through all the things in its way and striking Eri. Gah! Overhaul, who was right next to Eri, was also struck by the lightning as it was blown back a few feet. When the lightning flash subsided, Eri was now in her adult form and free of her bindings. What the fuck? Mimic shouted in shock. Eri, that was you. Overhaul shouted out in rage. He thought that the person that struck him with lightning just had a similar appearance to Eri. After all, Eri was a child, and her quirk had nothing to do with shooting lightning. He had already planned to hunt down and kill whoever it was that had struck him, but knowing it was Eri enraged him even further. In the face of Overhaul's furious gaze, Eri, with speed beyond what they could even see, picked up Koda and Izuku and ran off. What the hell just happened? Shin asked. Since when could Eri do that? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Overhaul growled. Lock down the base, send everyone. Bring them to me. Meanwhile, with Eri, Izuku, and Koda, Eri ran through all the Yakuza thugs in her way, taking them down literally without even trying, until she reached her destination. She ducked into a room and finally stopped. The poor girl was still hyperventilating, purely out of fear. She set both Izuku and Koda down and ripped the tape off of both their mouths. Not even taking a moment to acknowledge the pain of having the tape ripped off, the two boys immediately knew what to do. Shazam. Two bolts of lightning struck down and hit Izuku and Koda, transforming them into their stronger, bigger selves. Oh God, we almost died. Izuku shouted. If you didn't rip off that tape, we would have been taken apart, Koda added, before looking at Eri. Why'd you stop here? 3 don't know, Eri answered honestly. Izuku looked around and noticed the room was a bit strange for a room in a villain's evil lair. In the center was a large bed, and scattered all around the bed were toys. Unopened and used toys. Eri, is this your room? Izuku put together. Eri nodded. In her panicked, desperate mind, she went to the closest place she thought was safe. Of course, She knew this place wasn't actually safe, but Overhaul had never hurt her in this room. No, he'd take her out of this room, and then he'd hurt her. But it was that illusion of safety that caused her terrified mind to bring her here. Grr, that bastard. Kota growled, his fear now quickly being replaced with rage. I'm gonna beat him till he turns blue. No, we need to leave, Eri insisted. We need to hide. No, Izuku said, gathering both of their attention. We can't just run away forever. They'd find us eventually, and we can't go to the police. Izuku looked up at both of them, determination blazing in his eyes. The best thing we can do is stop him right here, right now, and then hopefully find some evidence after we're done so we can give it straight to the heroes. But Eri tried to protest, but she couldn't find the words. I like this plan. Let's do it. Kota agreed, lighting sparking off of his body. Eri. Izuku walked up to Eri and put his hands on her shoulders. I know you think he's too strong, but knocked him out with one attack earlier. We can do this. 3. She was so overwhelmed, she didn't know what to say still. PSH, she can leave if she wants. Kota rolled his eyes and cracked his knuckles. If that's what she wants, Izuku said. If you use your super speed, then you could leave and fly away pretty easily. But me and Kota are going to stay and fight. What do you want to do, Eri? Once again, Eri found herself without words, but this time it was all momentarily. Why are you doing all this? Why are you risking your lives for me? Why? Eri asked, completely baffled as to why anyone would do so much for someone like her. Once again, Izuku gave her that warm, pleasant smile. What do you mean? It's just the right thing to do. And you don't deserve to be stuck here with that creep anyway. Kota crossed his arms. But don't get me wrong, I'm not doing this for you. He's after us too, so we don't have a choice. Izuku Kota, Eri whispered. She shut her eyes and made a decision. Despite her fears, despite how much she wanted to run, she couldn't just leave. She couldn't just stand aside and allow these two to fight for her. And if something went wrong, she'd never forgive herself. I'll fight, Eri shouted. The determination in her voice surprised everyone present, including her. But she meant it. She wouldn't leave these two behind. All right, then what are you waiting for? Kota said impatiently. Let's go kick some ass. Crash. It was at that moment, the door was kicked at him, and behind it were 3 of Overhaul's 8 precepts of death. Toya Setsuno, quirk, steal. Yuhojo, quirk, crystallize. And Soramiza table, quirk, food. Eri, you being a naughty girl, Toya said, pulling out a gun and firing at them. BLAM, BLAM, BLAM. The bullets bounced off their impervious skin, much to the surprise of the 3 villains. Izuku was the first to attack, launching a bolt of lightning at Toya. Ah! The blonde-haired villain screamed as he was launched into the hallway, hitting the wall and slumping onto the floor unconscious as his chest was left smoking from the attack. Toya, you looked at his unconscious friend before turning back to Izuku with a deadly glare. You bastard. The bald villain covered himself in hard crystals and charged at the trio. However, he never even made it a foot towards them before Kota punched dead center in the chest. The villain shouted out in pain. Bits of crystal went flying everywhere, as the punch Kota gave was so strong it broke through the villain's defense completely and sent him flying into the wall like his friend, slumped over and unconscious. Rah! Not wasting the time to talk, Tabe launched himself at Kota and bit down on his arm. However, much to his surprise, the only thing this hurt was his teeth. Huh. Tabe didn't understand. His quirk should have allowed him to bite right through this guy's arm. He tried to bite down hard, latching onto Kota's arm with his teeth, but he couldn't hit through it. Ow, ow, ow. Kota hissed. He shook around his arm to try and get tape off, but the villain hung on. Albeit he did get very nauseous from being shaken around at super speeds. Get off him, Eri shouted, blasting him with lightning. Ragaharaha, Tabe shouted as the electricity fried him. After the attack was done, Tabe's jaw relaxed and he slid to the floor, falling into unconsciousness like his friends. Are you okay, Kota? Izuku asked him. Fine, Kota grunted. It was like getting bit by a baby. All right, let's go find Overhaul, Izuku said. Right, Kota said. Right, Eri stuttered. And with that, 3 ran out of the room. Back with Overhaul. This doesn't make any sense. Overhaul growled as he watched everything happen on the security cameras. How did Eri get this strong? What the hell are those quirks? It really just doesn't make sense. Chrono agreed. We know how Eri's quirk works, and it's never done any of this. Not to mention those 2 kids having the exact same abilities seemingly. It just, unless you think he is behind this? No. Overhaul shook his head. If All for One found Eri and wanted to interfere with what we were doing, we simply would never have found her again. Whatever this is, it has nothing to do with him. So what is this? Chrono asked as he watched the trio effortlessly defeat the Yakuza thugs in their way. And what the hell does the Shazam mean? Mimic asked. The other 3 men looked at him strangely, wondering what the heck he was talking about. What? It's fucking weird? Eri and those brats said it before they transformed. What the heck does it mean? Is it a catchphrase or some shit? Mimic asked. Overhaul sighed and was about to dismiss what Mimic said from his mind when suddenly a few thoughts occurred. Why did they say this before they transformed? It could just be a catchphrase, but that didn't seem right. They didn't transform until after the tape was taken off their mouths. Why wait that long? Why not transform as soon they thought they were in danger? Did their ability to speak, or rather to say that word, have something to do with their transformation? The 3 are about to encounter the rest of the 8 precepts, Chrono reported, pulling Overhaul out of his thoughts. Overhaul would watch this next fight closely and look for any weakness he could find. Back with the trio. The 3 of them dashed into a room and suddenly stopped when they spotted some more intimidating foes. Rappa, Hekiji Tingai, and Rikiya Katsukame. Well, looks like little Eri grew up, and grew up nice, Rikiya said in an uncomfortable manner, making Eri shrink behind Kota and Izuku. You do know she is still a child, right? Tingai asked in a more than slightly disgusted tone. PSH, you act like that's the worst thing we've said to that girl. Rikiya shrugged. Well, brats, did you come here for a beatdown? 'Cause that's what you're gonna get. Rappa taunted. Yeah, I don't think so. Kota had enough of waiting and shot out a bolt of lightning at Rappa. However, the bolt was blocked by a glowing green barrier, which was immediately destroyed by the attack. What? They destroyed my barrier in just one attack? Tingai's eyes went wide with shock. Come on, fight me like a man. Shooting lightnings for pussies. Rappa taunted. Being Berta. Suddenly, as Kota was being all confident, he started getting dizzy. Kota, Izuku, and Eri started stumbling around as they struggled to maintain balance in the face of overwhelming dizziness. The room is spinning, Eri said. Feel Lingdaze? The 3 of them looked up and saw Didoro Sakaki hanging from the ceiling with a bottle of alcohol. His quirk must be making us dizzy, Izuku realized. Hiya. Rappa made it into punching distance of Kota and unleashed a rapid barrage of blows at the man/child in blue. Kota was launched back into a wall, hitting it so hard it left a human-sized dent. Hey Kota, Izuku shouted out in concern. 2M fine. Kota tried to pull himself up, but that was easier said than done. Not because of Rappa's attack, which had only just barely hurt, but Didoro's quirk on the other hand was making things much harder. TCH, can someone take that bastard out? 2 got it. Eri tried to hit the villain with a bolt of lightning, but due to her dizziness, she was way off the mark. Niaxame you drunk. Didoro slurred. Izuku went to try and help by throwing some more lightning at Didoro, but the other Yakuza members weren't just going to stand by and let him. Rikiya grabbed Izuku's hand and started using his quirk to drain his vitality. Man, you got a lot of this stuff. Izuku threw out a dizzy punch. Rikiya easily dodged the punch, but wind pressure resulting from the punch knocked him back onto his ass. This kid's punches are no joke, Rikiya commented as he pulled himself back up. Izuku. Eri went to throw some lightning at Rikiya, but Rappa stopped her with a barrage of punches. Eri was sent flying into a wall, just like Kota. Gah, this is really fucking annoying. Kota's eyes glowed with lightning, as he could feel power welling up inside him. He raised his hands, which were brimming with electricity, and unleashed a huge wave of lightning. This attack would have hit basically everyone on the ground if Tengai had not put up a barrier to block the attack. Grr. His attack is too strong. Tengai struggled to keep the barrier together, but it was cracking very quickly. Unfortunately, before Kota could destroy it, he lost his focus and fell over, his attack dissipating as Didoro's quirk worked its magic. Tengai deactivated his quirk. Take them out quickly. I can't keep blocking their attacks. What worthless shield you are then. Rappa charged towards Kota and unleashed another barrage of attacks. Kota was once again unable to stand his ground and knocked back. Gah, damn drunk. Hee. Didoro laughed as he took another drink. Meanwhile, Izuku had once again engaged Rukia. The larger man grabbed Izuku and tried to suck as much vitality out of him as he could. Gay, I can feel my strength draining away. Izuku thought. He could easily throw him off or hit him with electricity when suddenly he had some sort of epiphany. Izuku struggled a bit, and with his strength, he managed to force himself onto the ground, with Rukia still grabbing onto him. The green champion struggled to move around due to the dizziness, but eventually, he managed to make it right under where Didoro was hanging, with Rukia still on him. I may be too dizzy to aim right, but I know something that always comes straight down. Izuku thought. Shazam. Crockham. Ah! The lightning bolt came straight down, hitting Izuku, Rukia, and Didoro, frying the latter too and reverting Izuku to his child form. When the lightning flash died down, Didoro fell to the ground, and Rukia slumped over, both down and out as their bodies smoked. Izuku crawled out from under the massive villain and immediately shouted Shazam. Crockham. And in a flash, he was back into his adult form. Oh no. It was at this moment, Tengai realized that the fight was over. With the dizziness gone, Eri ran up to Tengai at speeds he couldn't react to and backhanded him into a wall, taking him out of the fight as well. Finally, maybe now you can put up a real fight. Rappa smirked, as he once again charged at Kota and let his fist fly. However, this time, the boy was ready for it and grabbed both of Rappa's fists, stopping his attack in its tracks. How's this for a real fight? Kota said, before unleashing his lightning. Raragaraga. Rappa's body spazzed out as a crap ton of electricity ran through his body. After a few seconds, Kota stopped his attack, and Rappa fell to the floor. Ow, my head still hurts. Eri groaned. Yeah, that guy was really annoying, Kota growled, walking over to Didoro's body and giving it a light kick, probably breaking a few ribs. Nice work taking him out, Aizu. Thanks. Izuku smiled at them briefly, before turning towards the corridor that would lead them to Overhaul. Let's go. Back with Overhaul. Damn it. Chrono cursed, slamming his fist against the wall. They didn't even stand a chance. Even Rappa's attacks barely hurt them, Shin noted, sweating nervously under his clothes. They only lasted as long as they did because of Didoro's quirk. What are you two worrying about? Mimic shouted at them. We're the fucking Yakuza. We can't be taken down by a bunch of twerps. Right, boss? All three of them looked at Overhaul, who was deep in thought. Boss. Mimic repeated. That word again, Shazam. Overhaul spoke. He said it when he transformed back into a child, and again when he turned back into an adult. Shin, I have an idea. Back with the trio. This place is like a maze. Kota pointed out as they ran through the base. He's over there. Eri guided them. After a few more moments, with Eri giving them directions, they finally reached the room Overhaul, and the rest of his men were in. Except for Mimic, who was nowhere to be seen. However, this went unnoticed by the three champions. It's over, Overhaul. Izuku shouted at the villain. Surrender now, and we won't have to hurt you. Speak for yourself, Kota said. I've been looking forward to this. Overhaul turned to his black-cloaked minion, Shin. Shin walked forward. How do you transform? Suddenly, all three of them were compelled to say, We say Shazam. Crockham. 3 lightning bolts came down and reverted all 3 of them to their child states. Huh. All 3 of them were in shock. Their mouths moved without them wanting to, forcing them to return to their helpless forms. After the shock wore off, all 3 of them were about to say Shazam again. However, the steel floor moved upwards and grabbed them by the mouths, before wrapping around their bodies and keeping them in place. MMMM. The kids struggled as best they could, but to no avail. Once again, they were gagged and bound before Overhaul, completely and utterly helpless. Good work, Mimic. Overhaul praised his lackey before focusing his attention on the children. Airy, when will you learn? You belong to me. No matter how powerful you get, you will never be free of me. MMMM. Airy was once again in tears. I should have told them to leave. We shouldn't have done this. Now, Overhaul took off his glove. Where were we? Hey, boss, said Mimic's voice coming from the walls. Now that Airy's got this power, how are we going to keep her locked up? Don't worry about that. I'll just have to put her in a coma. Just like him. Overhaul explained. Now, which one of these two should I kill first? MMMGH. MMPH. Izuku kept trying to struggle his way free, while Koda simply leveled a death glare at Overhaul, which the villain noticed. You're the one that punched me in the testicles earlier. Overhaul glared at the small boy. Yes, I think I'll take you first. MMPHH. As Overhaul got closer and closer to Koda, making sure to take his time to fill their hearts with fear and dread before they died, Izuku and Eri tried to call out for him to stop, but their muffled cries went unheard. As Overhaul's hand got closer and closer to Koda's face, Koda wiggled his hands around. He couldn't move his arms, but he could wiggle his wrist around, just enough to face his palm towards Overhaul's head. Splash. Just as Overhaul was about to touch Koda, the boy activated his quirk and unleashed his quirk at max power, shooting the strongest blast of water he could manage directly at the villain's face. This didn't do any damage, but it did surprise Overhaul enough to cause him to fall over and made his hand hit the floor. Overhaul's quirk activated, and the first layer of the floor was instantaneously destroyed, knocking the other two villains off their feet and freeing the three children. Shazam! Koda shouted the moment he could. Crockum! The lightning struck, and Koda was once again in his adult body. Before the villains could get their act together, he struck Shin with lightning, so powerful it knocked him through a wall and caused him to pass out immediately. No, Overhaul growled. He noticed Izuku had not transformed yet and decided it best to take him out while he could. Using his quirk, he reformed the broken floor into a wave of spikes and sent them to Izuku. Not on my watch. Koda, using his super speed, got in front of Izuku and took the attack, the spikes breaking against his chest. What are you two waiting for? Say the word. Izuku and Eri, who were both initially in shock, finally got their heads clear and said, Shazam! Crockum! Yes, Izuku cried. Great work, Koda. Koda gave a cocky smirk. As if I was going to let this bastard kill me. Now let's kick his ass. No, damn it. Get away. Chrono sent out his hair arrow at them, trying to defend Overhaul, but this predictably did nothing but bounce off Izuku's chest, who then retaliated with a lightning bolt, taking him out of the fight as well. Your turn, your bird-faced bastard. Koda was about to attack Overhaul, but then the floor rose up, creating a wall between them and Overhaul. As if I'd let you. Mimic literally sent the entire room at them, sending columns and pillars at them, moving the floor around, doing everything in his power to attack the three. But the trio smashed through anything sent at them. Steel and concrete were all either punched or blasted with powerful bolts of lightning. Meanwhile, the entire time the room kept getting smaller and smaller as Mimic tried to crush them with the room itself. He's in the walls. We just need to find him, Izuku said as he punched through another concrete pillar. Eri blasted two slabs of steel that were thrown at them and noticed out of the corner of her eye, an eyeball looking down at them from above. Up there. I see him. Shit. Mimic tried to move away, through the walls, but he wasn't fast enough, and Koda charged at him, breaking through the wall and grabbing hold of the villain. Koda dragged him upwards, through the dirt, concrete, and steel, until they reached the surface and flew in the air. Crack! Koda slammed the villain down into the Yakuza's front garden, hitting the dirt with a loud thud, before flying down, punching him in the face. Mimic blacked out, regretting not being able to do more. Izuku and Eri flew out of the hole Koda made, and flew towards their friend, looking down at the crater he made with the unconscious Mimic in it. You, He got blood all over my hand. Kota raised his fist and shook it around, the rapid shaking splattering the blood off his hand. Is he okay? Eri asked timidly. Sure, she absolutely feared and despised these people, but she didn't want to kill anyone, not again. Kota looked down at his fallen foe and noticed his raspy breaths. He's still breathing, so he's fine. Now, where's over? Suddenly, the ground beneath them started to rumble and shake. The three of them flew up into the night sky to avoid losing their footing as the floor started to crack. What's going on? Izuku asked. Eri's eyes widened with fear as the dread in her heart told her exactly who was causing this. It's him. Ra! With a demonic cry, an enormous, monstrous Overhaul burst out the ground. Eri! Overhaul reached out an enormous claw at them, but they simply flew away to dodge it. How did he do that? Kota asked in complete shock. "Tu don't know," Eri answered. Never in her life has she seen Overhaul turn into something this inhuman before. Little did they know, while they were busy with Mimic, Overhaul carved his way through his base with his quirk and fused himself with the fallen members of the 8 precepts. Calm down, Izuku urged his 2 companions. Just because he's bigger doesn't mean he can stop us. Rah! Overhaul lunged at them, jumping into the air with arms out to try and grab them. Once again, they easily dodged this by just flying to the side, and Overhaul crashed into the ground. Ah! The street and pavement cracked and broke open as Overhaul landed, and all the people tried to flee from the monster. Oh no, the people! Izuku shouted. RHH. Overhaul used some of his massive arms to pick up cars and throw them at the trio, with people still in them. Izuku caught the cars, placing them down, and then catching more at super speeds, before flying back up to the others. We need to get the people away from him, or him away from the people. Otherwise, a lot of people are gonna die. Eri! Overhaul leaped at them, but once again, couldn't hit them. Wait a minute. Izuku realized something. Before Overhaul could hit the ground, Izuku dashed underneath his massive chest and punched him upwards. The punch tore a hole through the monster's chest like it was made of wet tissue paper, as well as sending him flying into the air, past Kota and Eri. The 3 of them looked at the massive hole in Overhaul's chest in horror. No! Izuku shouted, thinking he'd killed him. Suddenly, the hole repaired itself, and Overhaul was good as new and howling with rage. He heals, Kota growled. He must be taking himself apart and putting himself back together. Izuku realized. Such a waste of a good quirk. Izuku, focus. Kota glared at his friend. Right, sorry. We need to keep him in the air. He can't hurt anyone up there, but someone still has to get all the people away from here. Izuku ordered. Well, I'll keep the bastard in the sky, so don't worry. And with that, Kota flew off towards Overhaul, punching one of the villain's many arms off. While Kota fought the monster, Izuku and Eri were left to figure out who would help the civilians. Izuku looked at Eri, who was staring at Overhaul, frozen with fear and horror. Eri! Izuku flew over to her and grabbed her by the shoulders, shaking her until he managed to get her attention. I know you must be scared, but you don't have to fight that thing. Me and Kota can beat him while you get all the people away to safety. Tu don't know if I can. Eri trembled slightly in Izuku's arms. You have to try? Izuku told her sternly. We're the reason this is happening. If someone gets hurt because of him, then that's our fault. I'll try. Eri managed to pull out a bit more resolve. Good, the police and the heroes should have some kind of barrier or line set up. Put everyone close by, behind that line, Izuku told her. Okay. Eri took a deep breath. To have to do this. She sped away, finding the police line Izuku told her about, in seconds. Who's that? Asked a policewoman. I've never seen that hero before, a policeman said. Eri wasted no more time, dashing away and grabbing the first 2 people she could find, before flying back and putting them behind the line. What the one of the people that was grabbed shouted out loud. Neither of them had seen what had happened, only seeing a red blur, and then they were suddenly in a new location. Then that same red blur flew next to them, and 2 more people appeared, and then again, 2 more people, and again, and again. In a matter of seconds, Eri had already rescued a dozen people and wasn't slowing down. Izuku and Koda were doing so much for her, and she had to do her part. Meanwhile, Izuku and Koda were rapidly destroying huge chunks of Overhaul's body with a combination of punches and lightning. But Overhaul kept putting himself together no matter how many times they took him apart. Overhaul turned his arms into massive tendrils and sent them at Izuku, who blasted them to pieces with lightning. And then Koda flew past him and punched right through Overhaul's chest. "You brats!" Overhaul roared at them as he put himself back together. "Children like you could never understand. Eri is mine. She belongs to me. Shega." "No, she doesn't." Koda blasted him in the back with a powerful bolt of lightning. "I'm getting sick and tired of you talking." Koda kept pelting Overhaul with lightning bolts, destroying massive parts of his body one after the other, never letting up. He charged up another electric attack. Time to end this haghe. However, just as Koda was about to throw a huge bolt of lightning to finally end Overhaul, Crockham. Suddenly, a lightning bolt came down and hit Koda, transforming him back into a child. "What?" Koda shouted out in surprise before he started screaming because he was falling out of the sky. "Ah!" "Koda!" Izuku dashed up and caught him before he could fall too far and brought them both back to the ground. Crash! Without Izuku or Koda keeping him in the air, Overhaul's charred body fell into a building, destroying it and bringing them both it and him to the ground. "Koda, what happened?" Izuku asked the transformed boy. "I don't know," Koda shouted, only to suddenly fall to the ground. "Ah, why do I feel so tired?" Shazam! Crockham. The lightning came down, turning Koda back into an adult, however. Crockham. Just a moment later, the lightning came back down and turned him back into a kid. "Ah!" Koda fell on his back, completely exhausted. "Now I feel even more tired." "What happened?" Eri flew down next to them. She had seen the lightning strike and figured something must have gone wrong if either of them were turning back into kids at a time like this. "Koda can't use his powers." Izuku searched his brain for any reason why this might have happened. But why? Wait, the wizard said our powers were limited. We must only be able to use so much power right now. So we can't just keep fighting him? Eri asked fearfully. "No." Izuku shook his head. "If Koda's out of power, then that means we'll probably be out of power too soon." Eri gasped out in horror. "Damn it," Koda cursed as he tried not to fall asleep. "Eri." Overhaul had put himself back together and rose up, looking for them. "We have to be smart. We have to come up with a plan." Izuku stuttered, starting to panic slightly. As Izuku muttered away trying to figure out an answer, a solution suddenly appeared in Eri's mind. She'd have to use her quirk on him. "But if I did that, I might kill him," Eri thought. And so the decision came. Did she risk it and see if she and Izuku could take on Overhaul with their leftover power? And if they failed, they would die? Or she could use her quirk on Overhaul and possibly kill him. In the end, it came down to this: risk their lives or risk theirs. Eri shut her eyes and made her choice. She flew up, away from Izuku and Koda, and made her way towards Overhaul. She heard Izuku call her name behind her, but she ignored him. When she reached Overhaul, he noticed her and turned to face the girl he had hurt oh so much. "Eri, you're mine. Come here." As Overhaul reached out to her, Eri froze. Now faced with the monster her tormentor had become, she was stuck with intense fear. However, her horns started to glow, and a green aura started to encompass her body. Overhaul's huge claws enclosed on her. And then a green flash consumed everything. Whoa! Izuku, who had flown after Eri, was blinded by this flash and had to look away. When the flash died down, Overhaul and vanished completely, leaving only Eri, flying in place, her eyes wide and still filled with fear and shock. Crockham. Without saying the word, lightning came down and stuck Eri, transforming her back to normal. Izuku grabbed her as she started falling and held her in his arms. "Eri, what? What happened? Where'd he go?" Izuku asked her, his voice full of confusion. "He's dead." Eri's voice was low and tired, her tear-filled eyes struggling to stay open. "Two killed him. Oh," was all Izuku said, as he looked back at where Overhaul had been. That massive, building-sized monster. Gone in a flash. All because of Eri's quirk. But even more shocking, they had killed someone. Sure, it was Eri that did it, but it was only because they had run out of options, and because he couldn't come up with a better one. So in Izuku's eyes, this was more his fault than hers. But he couldn't focus on that now. The heroes would be here soon, and he could already hear news helicopters making their way over. They had to leave now? Eri, just go to sleep. We're going home, Izuku told her. With tears still in her eyes, she obeyed and fell into a deep slumber. Wasting no more time, Izuku used his super speed to scoop up Koda, who was now also sleeping, from where he had left him, and flew away. Shortly, at the destroyed manor. Izuku made it back to the manor in less than 2 minutes. He dashed through the door and flew through the halls, not stopping until he reached the room he and Koda took up residence in. Once he finally reached that room, he finally calmed down. Phew, I made it. Izuku breathed a sigh of relief. He was worried that at some point while he was flying, he would overuse his power and transform back. After dropping both Eri and Koda down on the 2 beds, Izuku finally transformed back. Shazam. Lightning struck, and Izuku was back in his child form once more, and was extremely tired. He collapsed on the floor, sitting back against a wall. I don't understand. I wasn't anywhere near this tired when I was transformed. I wasn't even tired at all. Can I not get tired in that form? Izuku wondered. I don't think I had much power left to use in that form. 2M so tired. Unable to fight off sleep much longer, Izuku closed his eyes and fell into unconsciousness. The next afternoon, the trio started to open their eyes. Strangely, they did so all at once, perhaps because they all fell asleep at the same time, or perhaps because of the magic, but all at once they began to rouse from their slumber. Oh, Koda groaned. He felt groggy for a moment, as his brain started to wake, but then he remembered what had happened yesterday, and he instantly woke up. What happened? Where's Overhaul? Over. Eri, who was also just starting to remember yesterday, recalled what happened to Overhaul. Too. He died, Izuku answered. Uneasiness and sadness were thick in his voice, as the realization of what they'd just done. Eri used her quirk and, we killed him. We killed him? Koda repeated in shock. Eri hung her head in shame. No, I killed him. It's my fault. I was scared and I didn't want him to hurt you, so I'm sorry. Once again, Eri burst into tears, thinking that now, it was over. They'd seen her use her quirk on someone. They'd seen her kill someone. Surely they'd see what a monster she was now. Surely they'd hate her. The room was nearly dead silent for a few minutes, with the only sound coming from Eri's sobs, as the other 2 took time to process this information. As Eri waited for their inevitable rejection, she instead heard, "Why are you apologizing?" Eri stopped crying for a moment and looked up at Koda, who had been the one to ask the question. Koda seemed frustrated, not overly angry or sad, just frustrated. It's not your fault. You did what you needed to do. Koda crossed his arms. If anything, it's his fault for trying to kill us. You didn't have a choice, so don't cry about it. But Eri was once again left speechless. How was she supposed to react to that? And you? Koda turned to Izuku, who looked up at him in alarm. Don't blame yourself either. But if I just used my powers better, or just came up with a better idea, then Koda cut him off. It takes heroes years to learn how to plan and use their powers. You got yours yesterday, Koda pointed out. And where were the heroes anyway? Why didn't they help? Well, we kept Overhaul up in the air a lot, so they probably couldn't have gotten to him. Izuku defended the heroes he loved so much. And what about All Might? Or Hawks? Why didn't they help? It's not like they couldn't see him. He was the size of a skyscraper. Koda shouted. Where were they? Maybe they were busy? Izuku suggested. Too busy to stop a giant rampaging monster. Koda argued. Why did we have to take down a crime boss all by ourselves? We're just kids. But we did it. We took them all down, and we saved a lot of people. Eri butted in. But I killed him and saved a bunch of people by doing so. How many people would that monster have hurt or killed if we didn't stop him? Koda continued. Are you saying we should have killed him? Izuku asked, not quite sure what he was saying. No. Yes, we didn't have a choice. Koda answered. It's not our fault that we couldn't master our powers after having them for a day. It's not our fault we couldn't beat a super powerful crime boss after fighting his goons all day. It's not our fault we had to kill him. It's not our fault we wanted to live. Kota stopped to catch his breath after telling so much, giving the other two time to speak. I guess, even heroes have to kill sometimes, Izuku said. He didn't truly believe that there was no other way, but he saw Kota's point. But that didn't make the terrible feeling go away. Eri thought about Kota's words as well. Overhaul was a monster, of that she was certain. How many people would he hurt? How many people would he have hurt with those bullets if he caught her? Was it okay to kill him? Her brain told that Kota was right, but her heart was undecided. But one thing she could at least take solace in is that she was finally free. Overhaul could never hurt her or anyone ever again. More tears spilled from her eyes. Are you crying again? Kota scowled. I've known you for a day, and you cry more than Izuku. Hey, Izuku objected. I told you it's not your fault, Kota repeated. I know, but I'm free. Eri whispered. I don't have to go back to him anymore. He can't hurt me. I'm free. There were a few moments of silence, as they acknowledged what she said and what it meant. So, where are you going to go? Izuku asked her. Do you have any family? Eri shook her head. They don't want me. Well, you could stay with us. Izuku told her to try and cheer her up. You want me to stay with you? Eri asked. Despite everything they'd said to her, she was still surprised they'd want her around. Well, you got nowhere else to go, so might as well, Kota told her. Eri tried and failed to respond, once again overwhelmed with emotion. Izuku stood up and gave her a determined look. Let's stay together and help each other as friends. Okay, Eri? Eri paused, and eventually, she found her words. Okay. And with that, a legendary trio was formed. Although they were inexperienced children, they all held great power within them. And that power would be needed to face the challenges to come. Meanwhile, in the Egyptian desert, under the sands of Egypt, there was a door with a lightning bolt symbol engraved on it. Throom. Suddenly, on the door, a small crack appeared. Welcome to HNN News, said a newsman as he and a newswoman sat at the typical news desk and had the typical coffee. This morning we have more news on the vigilante group that appeared 2 weeks ago. The newswoman said as the screen showed pictures that had been taken of the three while in their battle with Overhaul. Although they were barely visible in them due to their speed and the fact that the battle had taken place at night, there is no official name for this group. However, people have taken to calling them the Marvels, on account of their incredible power. Power which they'd been using quite often. The newsman interjected. Marvel Midori has been on a saving spree since then. He saved every resident of a collapsing apartment building, stopped 9 villain attacks, held up a collapsing bridge long enough for heroes to evacuate everyone on it, and has even been seen helping cats out of trees. Videos of Izuku in his transformed state, now called Marvel Midori by the people, doing amazing things and saving lives. Meanwhile, Marvel Aoi has been doing less heroic acts. Namely, he can be seen doing small labors for people, using his powers for personal gain. The newswoman said, although all his clients have denied saying they paid him or asked him to do anything, it's highly unlikely that is the case. Videos of Kota in his transformed state, now called Marvel Aoi, doing small tasks, blowing the leaves off someone's lawn by blowing them away, doing tricks with his lightning at a party, and also helping cats out of trees, and the later accepting reward money. Marvel Aka has yet to be seen after her appearance in the battle with Kai Chisaki and her disappearance after being struck by lightning, the newsman reported. A video taken on someone's phone showed Eri in her transformed state, now called Marvel Aka. Right after she killed Overhaul, she was then struck by lightning and turned back into a little girl. However, the camera was too far away and it was too dark to actually see her transform, so it just looked like she had vanished. Little is known about these vigilantes, other than they are extremely powerful, the newswoman warned. And while the latter two may seem harmless, and while Marvel Midori may seem very hero-like, they are dangerous vigilantes, responsible for the disappearance of Kai Chisaki, and Pew. The television was turned off by none other than Kota. It had been 2 weeks since getting their powers, and Kota had made some renovations to their room in the manor. Firstly, they now had 3 mattresses as well as pillows to go along with their blankets. He also had a busted-up old couch that was torn, with some fixes being made with duct tape. There was also an old refrigerator that, despite not being plugged in, still seemed to work. The same thing went for the old TV that also was not plugged in, but functioned as if it was. The room was a lot less dirty now, thanks to Eri doing her very best to clean the place up. Partially because she wanted to help out, and partially because Overhaul was a huge clean freak and instilled these habits into her. Speaking of Eri, she had finally gotten out of her old clothes and into some new ones. They were cheap and she didn't have many, but it was better than what she was wearing before. Don't these losers have anything better to report? Koda complained. Also, what the heck are those names? They literally called green, blue, and red. Eri remained silent. She hadn't said much since she'd started living with Koda and Izuku. Almost as if she was scared she said the wrong thing and got kicked out. A few moments later, the door to the room opened, and Izuku walked in, looking a bit tired. There you are? Finally. You were out there for Koda looked at the new clock he got. For hours. How did you not detransform already? I just got better at using my power. Izuku yawned as he walked over to his mattress, collapsing on it promptly. You know, you could be using that power to make us some more money. I'm the only thing keeping us all from starving, Koda grumbled. I even got us some furniture. Oh yeah, how does that stuff work without electricity? Izuku asked as he pulled his blanket over his body. Izuku, we shoot lightning, Koda answered as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. I don't think that should work like that, Izuku responded. It's magic, who knows how it works? Koda shook his head. The point is that you should do something else besides play hero. Something that can actually help you. At least ask for a reward. Izuku frowned. Being a hero is its own reward. Koda rolled his eyes. Does that reward feed you or keep you warm? No, Izuku hesitantly admitted. Then it's a pretty bad reward. Koda deadpanned. Izuku shook his head and started to fall asleep. You just don't get it? I'm also learning how to use my powers. We're super strong. We could beat all kinds of villains if we learned how to use our powers right. We could even beat the villain that killed your parents. At that moment, both Koda and Eri froze. Eri froze because up until this point, she had no idea what had happened to either Izuku or Koda's parents. She was curious, but too afraid to ask in fear of offending them. But to hear that Koda's parents were killed, that something so terrible happened to someone she cared about, she felt horrible. Koda, on the other hand, was busy processing this thought that Izuku planted in his head. Muscular, an rank villain, the man who killed his parents. He was no joke when it came to power. He killed 2 pro heroes after all. Never in all his life did he even think about revenge, because he didn't think he would be capable of it. But now, things were different. He had power. Incredible power. Power that puts most pros to shame. He could take down the man who took everything from him. Koda hopped up from the couch, ran over to Izuku's bed, before shaking the green-haired boy awake. Izuku, wake up. Huh. Izuku opened his eyes, if only slightly. Next time you go out to do your hero thing, I'm going with you, Koda declared, a mix of determination and anger flashing in his eyes. Oh. Okay, Izuku said. He was half asleep, so he barely understood what Koda was saying. Can I come too? Eri asked very hesitantly, while also looking away from the two of them. You want to help too, Eri? Koda asked her, slightly shocked by this request. Eri nodded, still looking away from the two of them. Two want to help, like Izuku. This was partially the truth. She had always looked up to the way Izuku went out and helped people, just for the sake of helping people, but she'd always been too afraid of messing up and hurting someone to join him. But now that Koda was going, if she stayed, then she would be left all alone. She didn't want to be alone. Not again. Okay, more the help the better, I guess. Koda shrugged. The next day, in the Hoth marketplace. Ah! Screams erupted from the marketplace as civilians ran, trying to get as far as they could from the threat. And what was the threat? A villain made almost entirely of sludge was running through there, taking all the money he could from the various stores, and no one could stop him. The police were, as usual, unable to do anything, and death arms, the hero that had shown up couldn't touch the villain. "None of you can even touch me," the sludge villain said as it ran. The villain's eyes swiveled around and landed on a young woman. "Ah, an invisibility cloak, you'll do," the villain said maliciously as it lunged towards the girl. "Oh, help me," the woman cried, paralyzed with fear. Swoosh. Suddenly, as the sludge villain was about to grab her, there was a blur of red, and then she was gone. Huh. The villain paused, confused by the sudden disappearance of his soon-to-be victim. "Hey, up here." The villain's eyes looked up, and he saw Izuku and Koda flying above him. "Your quirk is so cool," Izuku told him. "It's such a shame you're a villain." "Yeah, it's really interesting. What do you think will happen if we zap him with lightning?" Koda quipped. Zap. Before the sludge villain could flee, Koda extended his finger and shot the villain with lightning. Bragragaff. The villain's body squirmed around frantically as the electricity filled his body and caused him to completely lose control. Once Koda was finished, the villain melted into a pile of sludge on the ground. Is he going to be okay?" Izuku asked with concern on his face. "Ow," the villain groaned. "He's fine," Koda said. Eri flew up next to her friends, still wearing an unsure expression. "Is it over?" "Hey." The three looked down as Death Arms marched up to them. "Oh, it's you. How's your jaw?" Koda asked smugly. "Really funny. You are under arrest." Death Arms yelled at them. Koda laughed hysterically at that statement like it was the best joke he's heard in years. "Really? And who's gonna arrest us?" "You? Last time you tried I hit you once, and you got KO'd. "Koali," Izuku said in a warning voice. They had all agreed that instead of using their real names, they would use the names the media had provided them, so no one could tell it was them. "Let's just leave." Eri nodded in agreement, but Koda ignored them and flew down to the ground to face Death Arms. "Come on, you want to arrest me, right? Try it, hero," Koda said with a vicious smirk. "Grr. Hera." Death Arms charged forward and tried to punch Koda, only for the vigilante to seemingly vanish. Huh. Too slow. Death Arms turned around and saw Koda standing behind him, with his fingers raised. Before the hero could react, Koda flicked the villain in the forehead, sending him flying a few feet back, landing on his butt. GGRR. Death Arms took a moment to recover. There was blood leaking down from where Koda had flicked him, and he was absolutely pissed. Koda taunted the hero, motioning for him to come at him. Death Arms got up and ran at Koda, but before he could get close, a bolt of lightning struck the floor right in front of him, forcing the hero to stop in his track and look up at Izuku, who had slung the lightning. "That's enough," Izuku said, with a seriously upset expression on his face. "TCH, I was just messing around." Koda crossed his arms in an annoyed manner. "You're embarrassing someone," Izuku told him, "and we can't waste our time anyway. Remember?" Koda scowled because he knew Izuku was right. They couldn't use their powers all day, and wasting it like this, even if it was fun, was wasteful. Fine. The blue champion took to the sky, and in a blur, he was gone. "Hey, come back here," Death Arms shouted at the empty sky. "Sorry about him." Izuku quickly apologized before following his friend. "Sorry," Eri said quietly, before also following the two. A few days later. "The prisoner has escaped. The prisoner has escaped." "Oh," shouted a policeman, right before his arm was cut off by an elongated tooth blade. On the bridge of Tartarus in the dead of night, a convoy transporting the dangerous criminal Moonfish was under siege by that exact same villain. Whoever had been in charge of securing the muzzle on the villain had done a terrible job, and after the truck he was in hit a slight bump, it became loose enough for Moonfish to use his quirk to free himself and start attacking the guards. 2 guards had been killed and many others had been injured, with one losing an arm. The men did their best, shooting at him in an attempt to take him down, but the villain defended himself by using his teeth as a shield. Flesh. Moonfish sent out one of his teeth, and it shot right towards one of the guards' chest. And right as it was about to impale that guard, crack! It suddenly broke against the chest of Izuku, who had flown in between the guard and the attack. Before Moonfish could do anything else, he was zapped by lighting from above, courtesy of Koda. After a few moments, Koda ended his attack, and Moonfish fell onto the van, knocked out. Done. Kota turned his attention towards the guards. Freeze. Some of the guards aimed their weapons at Izuku and Kota, as well as Eri, who was flying behind Kota, while some other guards took to trying to attend to their injured. Are you kidding me? Kota asked, disgusted that they would prioritize trying to arrest them after they just saved their lives over helping the injured. One of you is missing an arm. No time to waste. Let's get them to a hospital. Izuku quickly scooped up the guard missing his arm and flew as fast as he could to the nearest hospital. The other two followed his example and picked up as many injured as they could and flew them over to the hospital. A week later, at a beach. "Oh, help me," shouted a child as he flailed around in the water, trying not to drown. "Ah, my baby," shouted the mother of the child back on the shore. "Someone help him." Swoosh. Before anyone could do anything, a blue blur sped past them, right at the child. The blur swooped past the child, and the child disappeared before reappearing in his mother's arms. "Ah, my baby." The mother quickly got over her shock and hugged her son. "You're welcome," said Kota as he flew above all the beachgoers. "Get out of here," shouted one woman. "What?" Kota shouted in shock. "I just—" "Dirty vigilante. You're no better than the villains," shouted a man. Kota glared at the beachgoers, who continued to shout things at him, before finally taking his leave. A week and a half later, Eri looked at the remains of a recently collapsed building. This building had been the victim of a villain attack and had been heavily populated up until a few moments ago. Fortunately, while Izuku and Kota took care of the villain, she rescued the dozens of people inside the buildings. Eri didn't like fighting all that much, so she would typically leave that up to Izuku and Kota if she could help it, while she would rescue the people. As Eri was standing looking at the ruins of what once was people's homes, the press ran up behind her with their cameras and microphones. "Marvelaka, over here." Eri turned around and was immediately overwhelmed as the press swarmed her, surrounding her completely and shoving cameras and microphones in her face. "Marvelaka, why did you become a vigilante? Is it because you don't respect the law or pro-heroes?" "What? No," Eri answered quietly, trying to back away only to bump into another reporter. "Where did you and your siblings get your powers? Are you using quirk-enhancing drugs?" 3 Eri, despite having the speed of Mercury, couldn't answer the questions faster than they were being asked. "Why do you and your siblings look nothing alike? Did your mother or father have multiple affairs?" Huh. Eri didn't even know what that meant, but all this overwhelming attention was starting to cause her to tear up. "Do you know how irresponsible your actions are? Or do you not care?" As the reporters kept asking questions, and Eri started to cry. Crockham. Large bolts of lightning stuck all around the reports, causing them to stop and cower in fear, and looking up they could see a very upset Kota and Izuku, with lightning brimming from their eyes. "Get away from her. Now," Kota said. The words are else unsaid, but implied. Quickly the press dispersed, and Eri flew into the air next to the two of them. "Scum. Couldn't they see she was crying?" Kota muttered to himself, trying to make sure the other two couldn't hear him. "Are you okay, Eri?" Izuku asked her. Eri sniffed and tried to wipe the tears out of her eyes. "I'm sorry." Izuku was about to tell her not to apologize, but Kota spoke first. "Why didn't you just fly away?" Kota asked her. 3 Eri didn't know how to say she got overwhelmed. "Kowatsu." Izuku glared at his friend for his insensitivity. TCH. Kota didn't say another word, and instead, he just flew away. 2 weeks later. Crockham. Ikai City was on fire. Abnormally powerful bolts of lightning had been striking the city, courtesy of the villain 9. While their leader sent down his fury from above, his subordinates, Slice, Mummy, and Chimera, wreaked havoc on the ground. "This city will be a statement. A claim to my rule," 9 said as he stood on top of a building. "Well, that rule's not going to last very long, I'll tell you that." 9's eyes widened, and he quickly turned around to see Kota casually standing behind him. A marvel. 9 instantly recognized him. "I suppose you've come to stop me? You should be joining me. You have incredible power, and yet you use it for minor tasks and party tricks. You could rule with that power. You and your siblings. You should gawk. Before Nine could finish talking, Koda punched him in the gut, making the villain spit out blood all over Koda's arm before passing out from the force. Ugh, gross. Koda shook all the blood off his arm. Why do villains always have to give such long speeches? It's so annoying. Meanwhile, on the ground, people were running away from the combined force of Slice and Mummy. Slice shot out pieces of her hair at buildings, causing massive destruction around her, while Mummy wrapped whatever he could find up in his bandages. Cars, vending machines, and other things became puppets that would terrorize the people. One man was running away from one of Mummy's puppets when he tripped over a rock. Ah! Ah! The man screamed as the puppet came upon him, ready to attack. Zap! A bolt of lightning came flying, hitting the puppet so hard it pierced it, and went right through its body, causing it to explode. Huh! Mummy and Slice stopped their attack and looked where the lightning came from and saw Eri flying towards them. Hi, Eri greeted. Could you stop attacking the city, please? The two villains looked at each other for a moment as if asking, is she serious, before turning back to Eri and attacking her. Slice shot out sharpened strands of her hair at her, but this only served to irritate Eri as the strands bounced off her skin. Ow! Please stop. Eri raised her hands over her face to defend herself and shot some lightning down at Slice. The villain couldn't defend herself in time and was hit dead center. Oh! She flew back into a car which caved in from the force of impact. Slice. Mummy looked at his teammate and saw she was unconscious before looking back at Eri. I'm sorry, please surrender. Eri pleaded. Never. Mummy shouted with indignation, before getting blasted by a bolt of lightning into unconsciousness. Sorry. Eri apologized to no one in particular. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Chimera breathed fire on a car, causing it to explode. So you have super strength, durability, and you can breathe fire. Chimera stopped rampaging for a moment and looked up to see Izuku flying down towards him, eventually meeting him at eye level a few feet away. Why is it that so many villains have cool quirks? Izuku asked his foe. 'Cause not everyone thinks our quirks are cool. Chimera barked back. I'm what most people would call a monster. An abomination that should have never been born. Izuku finished the villain's sentence, much to Chimera's surprise. I see. You were hurt and blamed for something that was never your fault. Betrayed by people you thought you could trust. I understand. I understand. Izuku's tone took a somber tone as pain flashed in his eyes, telling Chimera that he wasn't lying. So you know? Then you should join us. You don't owe them anything. The strong should rule over the weak. Chimera preached. Izuku shook his head and sighed. Being hurt doesn't mean you can hurt people. It's not right. Grr. It's not right that they call me a monster even when I haven't done a thing. Who cares about what's right? It's an unfair world, and we have the power to make it ours. Chimera argued. Just because you can, doesn't mean you should. Izuku looked at Chimera somberly. I'm sorry for what you've been through, but if you don't stop, I will take you down. Grr. Try it. Chimera was done talking and let out a fire breath attack directly at Izuku. Izuku took the attack, not being affected by it in the slightest. The green vigilante charged through the flames at irrecoverable speeds, stopping right in front of Chimera before giving his chest a hard shove with his palm. Chimera was sent flying back, blood leaking from his maw as he flew through the air, eventually landing half a mile away from where Izuku and shoved him, completely unconscious. Izuku sighed. What a waste. As Izuku lamented the waste of such a cool and powerful quirk, Koda and Eri flew down beside him. Are we done here? Koda asked impatiently. We should be, Izuku said. He looked to Eri to see if she was ready to leave, and he noticed that she was staring at something behind them. What are you looking at? Eri didn't look at him, and wore an unsure and slightly scared expression on her face as she said, Why do they look so scared? Izuku and Koda looked closer at the direction Eri was staring at, and they could see people hiding from them. Why are they hiding? Eri asked her two friends. Izuku sighed. Because we're vigilantes. We're technically criminals. Even if we did just save their whole stinkin' city, Koda growled bitterly before turning away. Come on, we're done wasting our time with these cowards. Koda flew away, but Eri and Izuku stayed behind, looking at the terrified people they just saved. Are we doing the right thing? Eri turned to Izuku and asked. Of course, Izuku answered with little hesitation. If we didn't help, then a lot of people would have died. Eri didn't respond, but the feeling of unease remained with her. The tension was thick in the police briefing room, as the heroes who sat there were very high profile. Hawks, Best Jeanist, Crust, Eraserhead, Nizu, Mirko, Kamui Woods, Death Arms, Ryukyu, Fat Gum, and even Endeavor. After seeing the other heroes around them, the pros knew exactly what they were here for. The Marvels. They all knew that they'd have to deal with them sooner than later. Not that most of the heroes here were looking forward to it. Instead of a member of the police, the one leading the briefing was Sir Night-Eye, which made sense, seeing as the Marvel's debut was in getting rid of villains he had been trying to apprehend for years. Now, I'm sure you've all ascertained the reason as to why we've called you, Night-Eye said while pushing up his glasses. Mirko was the first to answer. Yeah, to take care of those flying assholes who think they can do whatever they want. Hey now, there's no need to use such harsh language. The Marvels have done some incredible things, even if it's on the wrong side of the law. Crust didn't hate the Marvels and actually appreciated a lot of what they did. It saddened him knowing they would have to take them in. They're vigilantes. What they've done beyond that is irrelevant. Endeavor spoke up. Our job is to take them in, as simple as that. While I don't think it's going to be anything resembling simple, Endeavor is right. Night-Eye pulled a remote from his pocket and pressed a button, and a projector shot an image of the Marvels onto the wall in front of everyone. To go over the basics, the Marvels are a 3-person vigilante team consisting of 2 males and 1 female. Marvel Midori, Marvel Aoi, and Marvel Aka. Night-Eye pressed another button, and the image switched to them fighting Overhaul in his monster form. They first appeared fighting Kai Chisaki after he presumably used his quirk to turn himself into this monster. Presumably, they had been fighting the Yakuza for quite some time inside the building, as some lightning bolts had been spotted striking the area by some nearby civilians. Although strangely, not only did the lightning bolts appear out of the clear sky and do no damage to the areas they touched, but also people more than a mile away claimed to have neither heard nor seen any lightning. Do you think it was some kind of proximity-based illusion? Aizawa asked. That's the only thing I can think of. That makes sense, but why? Nizu asked in return. They've shown the ability to shoot very real lightning. So why would they create fake lighting? We've also never seen them display any other illusion-based abilities in the past. Maybe we have, and we just didn't know. Hawks half joked. Ugh, fucking great. Just what those guys need, fucking illusions. Mirko complained. Putting that aside for the moment, the abilities we know the Marvels to have are superhuman strength, speed, durability, and reflexes, as well as the ability to fly and shoot blasts of electricity, Night-Eye stated, switching through slides that showed the Marvels using their powers. They also may have the ability to teleport, although this was only seen in their battle against Overhaul. Night-Eye showed a video that was obviously taken on someone's phone of a very, very far away Koda about to finish off Overhaul, only to get struck by lightning and seemingly disappear. Then it showed Eri after defeating Overhaul, flying in the air only to get struck by lightning and disappear. I'm not sure what that was. Nizu spoke his thoughts, gaining everyone's attention. Looking at it at a first glance, one could think that the Marvels had teleported away. However, with context, that theory falls apart. Firstly, why would Aoi choose to teleport away at that moment? He was clearly about to use a powerful attack on Overhaul and no reason to leave the battle. Marvel Aka makes more sense, as the battle was over and they would have left afterward. However, why would Marvel Midori not do the same thing? And of course, the biggest question of all, if they could teleport, why not do it more often? If this is teleportation, then I don't think that the Marvels were the ones controlling it. Or more likely. Night-Eye, do you have the full video of this encounter? Of course, Night-Eye responded. Then could you go to the part where Marvel Aoi disappeared? Nizu asked. Night-Eye gave a quick nod and then did just that. After a few moments, the video played, showing Aoi disappearing and then Midori flying towards where Aoi had been and then leaving the fight. There. You can see Marvel Midori quickly flying to Alway's location and then leaving. Nisa pointed out. Why? Oh, will you stop stringing us along and tell us what the hell you're thinking? Mirko shouted, entirely too impatient for Nizu's games. I was getting to that. Very soon after this happened, Marvel Aka stopped evacuating civilians, and then when the Marvels reappeared in the fight, aka unleashed her unknown attack on Overhaul and ended the fight. Nizu continued to set up his theory. Please fast forward to that, please. Night Eye fast forwarded to aka killing Overhaul and then getting struck by lightning and disappearing, and then showing Midori zipping over to her location, back down to where they'd come from, and then flying off away from the scene. And there's Midori's strange flight pattern. Instead of flying away from the scene of the fight instantly, he goes to AKA's location and then goes back to where they had flown out of, and then he flies away. Nisa pointed out, Sir Night Eye, has there been any news of the Marvels mentioning some kind of power or time limit? There have been reports of Marvel Midori saying things like, we don't have time for this, we can't waste time on this, don't waste your power like this, as well as other things of this nature to Marvel Aoi when he starts to mess around. Of course, it could be shrugged off as him not wishing to waste time, but the serious nature in which he says this implies it's more of a warning. Night Eye explained. The heroes perked up. A weakness? For the invincible Marvel. Fucking great. Death Arms celebrated. A potential weakness, it's only a theory. Nizu reminded them. And speaking of theories, I have one of my own. You see, judging by the evidence put in front of us, I theorize that the Marvel's quirks are transformation quirks. Transformation quirks? Fat Gum repeated. You mean that what we see is only a powered-up state of theirs? That would make sense. None of them wear a mask, and yet we have been completely unable to figure out their identities. Endeavor added. And I think I see where Nizu was going with this, Ryukyu said. When Marvel Aoi and AKA were struck by lightning, they weren't disappearing, they just became harder to see. It's possible outside of their transformations they could be significantly smaller, and at that range and at night, it would be practically impossible to see them. And once they had been forced out of their transformations, Marvel Midori had to go and catch them, and then bring them away from the fight, which explains their actions. It would also explain why they used that unknown attack and killed Overhaul, Aizawa added. The Marvels have been very careful not to kill anyone since this incident, so why now? And why would they use this unknown attack only this one time? The answer is because they were desperate. They were running low on either time or power, so Marvel Aka used her most powerful ability to end the fight before they all were forced out of their transformations. Murmurs rang among the pros as they seemed to agree on this theory altogether. But that leaves the question, is this a time limit or a power depletion limit? Genist asked. While I don't think we have enough evidence to say anything definitively, I would say it's more likely a power limit, Nizu said. The times in which the Marvels are active seem to be very inconsistent, and Marvel Midori tends to be more active than the other two, so it's possible that he is the best out of the three at conserving his energy, and what we've seen of the trio supports this. So it's possible that they have a limited amount of energy they can use before they transform back into a less powerful, if not completely powerless state. Night Eye laid out all the threads together, making it into one solid theory. We'll have to keep that in mind. Do you have any more theories, Nizu? Not at the moment, no? Nizu shook his head. Then let us move on, Night Eye said, getting slides back to where he wanted them to be. Now, the last ability of theirs you need to look out for is the most dangerous one, as well as the most unknown. And that is the power AKA used on Overhaul to end the fight. The video of AKA flying to Overhaul, there being a bright flash of light, and then Overhaul, a monster the size of a skyscraper, was gone without a trace. Lesser heroes would find this terrifying. These heroes just found it intimidating. We have no clue what happened here. At all. When we went to instigate the scene, there was absolutely nothing left of Overhaul. Nothing. He just vanished without a trace. Night Eye tried his hardest to emphasize both how mysterious and dangerous this ability was, and it seemed to have worked, as some of the heroes looked slightly unnerved. As of now, we have 5 theories about how this could have been accomplished. 2 unlikely ones, and 3 more likely ones. So all we can do is theorize about this. Whatever it is, it's extremely dangerous. Aizawa concluded. Starting with the two unlikely ones first, is that it was all an illusion and the Marvels were attempting to trick people into thinking positively of them by fighting a fake monster. Given that Kai Chisaki was a real person who is currently missing presumed dead, and that the destruction caused by Chisaki was very real, and that the Marvels have shown they are willing and capable of saving people from villains, this is unlikely. Night Eye said, the second unlikely theory is that they do in fact have a teleportation ability, and simply teleported Chisaki away. However, unless she teleported him very far away, then Chisaki definitely would have been noticed given his size. And of course, this theory would also bring up another question, that being, why wouldn't they do that more often? Okay, mind telling us the theories that might actually be true? Mirko asked impatiently. I was getting to that. The first more plausible theory is that she has the ability to manipulate matter. And the reason Chisaki disappeared into thin air is because he was turned into thin air. Night Eye explained, it's possible aka may not have full control over this ability, as therefore prefers not to use it unless it's an emergency. So basically it would pressure them hard enough they might turn us all into fucking air. Death Arms could feel his frustration growing. What's worse is the possible lack of control of something like that. Powerful quirks plus lack of control never ends well. Eraserhead pointed out. Well, the theories don't get much more comforting from here. The last two theories both involve a form of chronokinesis. The first of the two is that she actually teleported him through time, either to the distant past or the future. The second is that rather than sending Overhaul through time, she sent time through Overhaul. In other words, she rewound Overhaul's body back to the point when he didn't exist or was a sperm cell. Night Eye explained. You're right, it didn't get any more comforting. Fat Gum was confident his fat could take a lot of things. Getting erased from existence was not one of them. Oh yeah, great. But the better question here isn't what it is, it's how do we dodge it? Hawks asked. Because I don't know about the rest of you, but I would really like to not be insta-killed if they feel like they're in danger. Well, as stated, we have no real idea of what this attack is. So given our current knowledge, we have two methods of avoiding this attack. 1. Don't let them use it, and 2. Don't fight them. Night Eye suggested. We suggest the latter. Endeavor gave Night Eye a scathing glare. Are you suggesting that we simply let them do as they please without arresting them? What we are suggesting is that you all sit back and let All Might handle this. Night Eye didn't need to see the future to know that this statement would cause more than a little outrage. Mirko and Death Arms looked like he had just personally insulted them. However, before anyone could complain, Nizu spoke up. That would be for the best. Several glares, confused looks, and eyebrow raises were thrown Nizu's way. The mouse-slash-bear principal quickly explained himself. I've been looking into the Marvels since they arrived. I've been meticulous in calculating the limits of their abilities and their overall versatility, and I can confidently say that no single hero other than All Might could beat all three of them. Even fighting just one of them, it's unlikely that even Endeavor could win, and that's assuming they actually stay and fight, instead of just flying away. Nizu explained. And even if every high-ranking hero, aside from All Might, teamed up to fight the three, it still would not guarantee victory, and the sheer amount of property damage and casualties of both heroes and civilians is enough for us to say, it's not worth it. They're not causing enough of a problem for us to justify throwing an army of heroes and destroying the city to take them in, especially when we don't know for sure if that would work. Let us take a look back at how well you've performed against the Marvels at this point, Night Eye said as he pressed another button on his remote. The projection changed to a video of a boy running into the street, about to get hit by a car, only to get saved by Eri, flying in and swooping up the kid, and bringing him back to the sidewalk. Eri quickly tried to fly away, but she didn't get more than a few feet away when Ryukyu swooped down in her dragon form and slammed her to the ground with her massive claws. However, Eri was only trapped in the dragon hero's claw for a few seconds, before she immediately burst out, flying out of her clutches and away from the dragoness so fast that she could never hope to catch up. Ryukyu gave an embarrassed blush at the sight of her failure being projected for everyone to see. The next video was another one of Eri. This time she had just finished zapping a villain into unconsciousness and was flying over his body. She was then kicked away by an arriving Mirko. This actually seemed to do some small damage to Eri, as she was knocked across the street. Mirko jumped over Eri and was about to land an axe kick on her while she was down when she was suddenly blasted with lightning by a very pissed-off Koda. Mirko went flying back and crashed into a car, giving the two marvels a chance to escape. Mirko grit his teeth and growled at the video. Another video played, showing Death Arms getting taken on a stretcher after his first encounter with the marvels. And then another video of Koda playing around with him before flicking him away. Death Arms crushed an apple he was eating as the pure embarrassment he suffered was displayed. A few more videos played showing various heroes in the room getting absolutely humiliated by Eri and Koda, although strangely enough, Izuku didn't appear in any of the videos. After a few minutes, Night Eye pressed another button and the videos stopped. So as you can see, none of you stand any actual chance of stopping them. Out of everyone in this room, only about 3 of you are even capable of doing any significant damage to them. What about Eraserhead and Genist? Can't they do anything? Hawks asked. I've already tried using my quirk on them. It doesn't work. Eraserhead answered curtly. The same goes for me. Whatever those outfits are made of, it isn't any sort of fiber. Best Genist revealed. Wait, if they aren't fibers, then what the heck is it? Fatgum asked, genuinely curious. We don't know, and we have bigger things to worry about than what their outfits are made of. Night Eye dismissed. What we've brought you here to tell you is that you shouldn't engage the marvels for the time being, unless we can discover something useful that we could use against them. So we're just supposed to do nothing? Kamui Woods asked. Not necessarily. If my theory is correct, then if we could discover their identities, we could capture them before they get the chance to transform. Nisa told them, meaning that as of right now, everyone's only priority in terms of the marvels should be finding out their identities. A few heroes, namely Mirko, Death Arms, and Endeavor, seemed very unhappy with this news, but others were more understanding. Do we have any clues? Lead? Anything? Crust asked. Surely we must have something? Not much. Night Eye sighed. As I've said, we've been unable to successfully identify them using facial recognition. However, we did get something out of it. Night Eye pressed another button, and it switched a picture of 2 people. One being Koda in his champion form, and another being his father, Hosu Izumi. Both of them looked basically identical. The person on the left is Marvel Aoi, and the person on the right is Hosu Izumi, a member of the former hero duo, Water Hose. Night Eye explained, I'm guessing you noticed a resemblance? Mirko slammed her fist down on a table and held an outraged expression as she pointed at the projection. Wait one fucking minute. So you mean we did find out who he was? And he was a fucking hero this whole time? Obviously not if he said we haven't been able to identify them. Aizawa pointed out. Yes, seeing as Hosu Izumi is dead along with his wife, Night Eye explained. Both were killed by the villain Muscular, while they helped civilians evacuate the area. May they rest in peace, Crush said quietly. Did they have a kid or something? A brother? Fatgum asked. They did have a son. Koda Izumi. Night Eye pressed a button, and the projection now showed Koda, although he was much younger as the picture was taken before he ran away. However, it's unlikely to be him, as he would be around 7 right now, and is also most likely dead. That caused some alarm amongst the heroes. What do you mean, most likely dead? Kamui asked. Koda Izumi, after the death of his parents, was given to the only remaining family we know of, the cousin of Misu Izumi, Shino Sasaki, also known as the hero Mandalay, of the Wild Wild Pussy Cats. However, after only staying with them a few months, he ran away. Night Eye explained. Given that this was a few years ago and he hasn't been seen since, it's a fairly safe assumption that he died on the streets. Crust sniffled and let out a tear for the poor boy. First the parents, and then the son. That poor family. So it's just a coincidence? Aizawa asked. Perhaps, however, what's keeping me from writing this off as a mere coincidence is the fact that Aoi has been asking about the villain, Muscular, Night Eye explained, before showing another video. Koda stood over a villain who had been knocked to the ground, looming over him threateningly with his hands glowing with electricity. Where is Muscular? Who? The villain asked, fearing for his life. The video cut off, but it was safe to assume nothing pleasant happened to that villain. From this, We can indicate that there is most likely some connection between Marvel Aoi and Hosu Izumi, Naitai explained. Although we don't know what that connection is. It's possible he's a secret brother of his, although we don't know why he would be a secret. Not to mention we would also have to explain his quirk, which is unlike anything in the Izumi family, as well as it being shared by two people who look nothing like Hosu or anyone in the known Izumi family. Do we have anything on Midori or aka? Aizawa asked. No, those two we have nothing on. All we have about those two are guesses. Night-Eye said. Humph. Endeavor got up and without any explanation, started walking to the door. And where exactly do you think you're going? Night-Eye asked. This is a waste of time. Endeavor stated simply. If the point of this was to tell us not to engage the Marvels, you could have done that in a few seconds. And figuring out their identities is pointless. And how so? Eraserhead asked. Because we'll figure it out when All Might takes them in. Endeavor answered. If All Might is being sent to capture them, then there's no point in us getting involved. I see. And what if All Might fails to capture them? Nizu asked. Once again, many puzzled looks were thrown Nizu's way, as if the heroes were concerned that he'd lost his mind. Nizu simply shook his head. All Might can't fix all our problems. He's human, just as we are, and as such he is subject to human error. The Marvels are unlike any vigilantes we've seen before. It would be foolish of us to underestimate them. There were a few moments of silence, as Nizu let that information sink in. Bah, all this talk All Might, and he's not even here. Mirko pointed out. Where the hell is he? Meanwhile, with All Might, Toshinori Yagi walked through the police station, in his true, skinny form, holding 2 cups of coffee. He walked over to an office he was more than familiar with and knocked on the door. Come in, said the voice of Detective Naomesa. All Might pushed the door open and walked into Naomesa's office and saw the man himself looking up at him from his desk. Ah, Toshinori, you're here. And you brought coffee, Naomesa said with a smile on his face. Of course, I know how tiresome detective work can be after all. All Might took his seat across from Naomesa and handed his friend the second coffee. The two took long sips of their drinks before coming back up for air. And with that out of way, it was time to get to business. I'm assuming you know why I called you here? Naomesa asked, leaning down to pull something out of his desk. It's about the Marvels, right? All Might asked. Sorry I haven't been able to capture them yet. I just haven't run into them during my patrols, and well, I can't much after my patrols. I'm aware, and I don't think that's a coincidence, Naomesa told his friend. Looking at the times Midori and the other Marvels have been active, they've only ever been active after your patrols have ended. All Might's sunken eyes widened. You don't think they know about my time limit, do you? Maybe, while I think it's unlikely that it's a coincidence, it's possible that they've just taken notice of the fact that you're only active for a certain amount of time per day, Naomesa explained. However, it is still possible they know about your time limit. And if that's the case, given their quirk or quirks, I think you know who might be involved. All for one, All Might didn't like to even think that that villain could still be alive, but he couldn't deny the possibility after seeing the power the Marvels displayed. Right now we have 2 theories that connect All for One and the Marvels, Naomesa explained. The first one is that they work for All for One, and they act as vigilantes to decrease people's faith in heroes and cause chaos. Or, they were small-time vigilantes that All for One gave power to but doesn't have full control of. Again, this would most likely be done to decrease people's faith in heroes and cause chaos. So either they're pawns of All for One, or unknowing pawns of All for One. All Might summarized. I'd like to think it's the latter, or neither. Well, those are the only 2 theories we have right now on the origin of their power. If All for One isn't behind it, then there is someone very dangerous behind the scenes that we don't know about. Naomesa honestly didn't know which one was scarier. All for One, or a completely unknown enemy that could bestow power of this level on people. But regardless, we need you to bring them in. Meaning we'll need you to conserve your power until they make an appearance. All Might nodded. Hopefully won't take too long. People would notice if I didn't go on my patrols for a while. Well, if they really are avoiding you, then it might take longer than we'd like. Naomesa speculated. But let's just hope that's not the case. Right. All Might took another sip of his coffee. All Might knew what he needed to do. Even putting aside the fact that they were vigilantes, their possible connection to All for One was enough reason for All Might to prioritize taking them down. But they'd find out soon enough if they had any connection to that man.